Gary, look at his Bible.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that's true.
First time I met him, he had his Bible with him, and I thought, now there's somebody that reads the Bible. I mean, it was marked, and it was really something.
Mhm.
Y'all talking about David?
Yeah.
Yes, I bet.
I looked over at him. I almost said, David, you need a new Bible. And then I remember he will never get a new Bible.
They never will.
That's
Yeah.
his Bible. Yeah.
Hmm. Oh,
So-
what version is it? Does he use? The one that's
think-
all marked up.
I think it's King James, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what I think he mentioned that today, Chris.
But not the revised version.
He said the one he was talking about was King James. I don't know if it's the same one that he carries with him or not, but yeah, it is. I think it is King James anyway. So yeah, we'll give it a few more minutes. I don't know how much longer. So Molly, can you hear us?
Yes, and you
Oh, and we
can.
can hear you.
I know.
Oh, wonderful.
I got on early because I didn't want to waste people's time.
Oh no. Oh, you're never wasting our time. Please
Well.
don't feel that way.
Just seeing her smiling face is nice, isn't it, Chris?
It sure is. Here comes Denise.
Sam, you look like you're feeling better.
I am.
How's Ann doing?
She's doing terrific.
Good.
She recovered really quick, and
Oh, good.
my only thing is now I'm so weak. Other than that, I feel good, but I'm working on it.
Okay.
I swung a golf club today for a little bit.
Whoa.
Oh,
And
nice.
guess what, Beth? It isn't
What?
any better, darn it.
What'd you say?
It isn't any better. I was
Oh.
hoping,
Hey, you can use the excuse that you're, just a little tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get strokes now.
Now what is the weather there in Arizona, Sam?
It's just absolutely terrific. It's in the 50s in the mornings and gets around 80, 81 during the day.
Oh my
Sun
goodness.
shines every day.
Hmm.
And so this is our time of year, really.
Mm. Wow.
All of us in Ohio should have played golf today because it was 59.
Well, that's
Oh,
right.
Nice
nice.
today, yeah.
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 Or
Little
work in
wet.
the yard.
Good for you, Norma.
Hi, Sam. You're looking good.
Thanks, Norma. You do too.
Feeling better, I hope.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And
Starting to get my appetite back.
well, I hope you do.
Yeah.
Now, I must have missed it. Sam, did you and Ann both have COVID?
Yes.
Oh, you
Uh-huh.
did? Okay.
We're glad you're both feeling better.
Yeah.
Right.
There's Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Tom,
Hello.
All right. Well, it's a few minutes past the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. There's lots to cover tonight. So, would somebody pray for us to start us out? Or am I going to need to eeny, meeny, miny, mo again and call on somebody? I can't remember who all I've called on.
You've called on me.
I've called on you. I know Norma's done it twice.
oh, twice.
I was gonna ask Sam to do it, but he's just up and left.
Yes, I'm not running away.
That's the way to get out of praying. Good job, Sam.
Oh, wait, I hear my doorbell.
Oh, he's coming back.
Well, he's just getting his prayer.
Yeah.
No, I had one. I can't find it, darn it.
Mm-mm.
Well, Sam, would you pray for us to start us out?
Sure. Let's bow our heads.
Thank you.
Heavenly Father, thanks again for having us all get together and study your word. It's been very enlightening for me. I certainly learned a lot from all of you, all the participants in the that are in our study. I thank Chris for taking his time and getting with us every Thursday evening, which is really great. We thank you for our many blessings and continue to keep us all healthy and continue to help us learn. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sam. All right. So last time, and I know it's been a while because we had Thanksgiving off, and I think the previous week we had a joint session with a Tuesday night because of church conference. So
Right.
How'd that go together? Did it work well together? Or?
I'll ask the folks who were
Sorry, I
there
couldn't make it.
on Zoom if that went well.
I thought it did.
I thought it did.
Could you hear okay? And
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I could not hear okay. So it was,
Beth could
it was a
not
little,
hear.
yeah, it was a little frustrating for me because I could hear you, Chris, but I couldn't hear the people at the other end of the table.
Yeah. Some people aren't very good at speaking out.
Projecting.
Yeah. So, well, we'll see how that. We'll see what to kind of do about it in the future. Maybe we get two microphones, maybe one on one end of the table and one on the other end of the table, and
That would be
see if
good.
That would
if I
help,
could-
Chris, because this morning it was very difficult to hear.
Yeah.
I asked Gary who it was at the end of the table. I didn't hear
Harry.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I asked him to speak up, and he spoke at about the same volume as he was. Yeah, we can. I will look into that for the future, because I would like to do a more combined group where everybody can hear all of the different inputs from everybody else. So, but last time we talked about Joseph's brothers going down to Egypt to procure grain because of the famine, and that was sort of the first time that they were going down there. And so tonight we have what my commentary labeled the second journey to Egypt. So now the brothers, they've run out of grain and they're going to go down again, but there's a little bit of a hiccup. So would somebody read for us verses in chapter 43, verses 1 through 15, please?
I can do that.
Thank you, Norma.
Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten up the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go again, buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.' If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy the food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, for the man said to us, 'You shall not see my face,' excuse me, 'unless your brother is with you.' Israel said, 'Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother?' They replied, 'The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, "Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?" What we told him was in answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Then Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the boy with me, and let us be on our way, so that we may live and not die. you and we, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. You can hold me accountable for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry them down as a present to the man. A little balm and a little honey, gum, resin, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the top of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also, and be on your way again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he may send back your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So the men took the present, and they took double the money with them, as well as Benjamin. Then they went on their way down to Egypt and stood before Joseph.
Thank you, Norma.
You're welcome.
All right. So what do you think of Jacob in this story? This is the first time we've really got an extensive interaction with Jacob since the focus has shifted to the brothers and Joseph.
It's kind of hard to tell whether Jacob was concerned about not sending Benjamin because, well, I don't know, part of me thinks that maybe he still didn't trust his sons enough to take another son. You know, what would happen? What would happen to Benjamin? Would he also lose Benjamin like he had lost Joseph?
Right.
That, or it looks like Jacob may have thought or knew that there's going to be a long famine and all of them may die down there. So maybe he didn't want Benjamin to go, since Benjamin tended to be evidently his favorite son.
Yeah.
He is now.
Right. I think he's very cautious too, since he's lost Joseph supposedly all those years ago.
I
Yeah.
think he might just be simply concerned about having all of his sons, even if it's temporary, to leave. I mean, weren't they a source of income and protection? And I mean, to have all of your sons leave your household, that just be a practical matter. It's not, that wouldn't be great for him and his household and maybe daughters and grandchildren and whoever is left behind.
That's a good point. I wonder why he sent all of them the first time around.
Yeah, you think that you don't need 10 of them to go. You know, you could have sent a couple with servants. I mean, you could have gotten the same result, send the same number of men.
I meant to look up, Chris, who is Judah's mother?
Judah's mother, Leah, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Judah's mother is Leah. Don't chew on that. Oh.
Plus, there's already one young man down there that's a hostage, Simeon.
Simeon, yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Well, that's a good point. You know, was Jacob content to just let Simeon rot in prison down there because he didn't want to send them back?
Yeah.
And he didn't know how long the famine was going to be. And so, you know, maybe he thought they'd just never go back there, and oh well.
Yeah, he wasn't in very much of a hurry. They ate all the food, right? Didn't they take their time before they went back?
Oh, I have to go let the dog out. Y'all keep talking about Jacob.
Okay. Who let the dogs out?
Maybe someone can help me understand. Now, Benjamin was the half brother of the rest of them.
Yes.
He was Joseph's only full brother. They
Right.
both came from Rachel.
From Rachel.
So once
Okay.
Joseph died, Benjamin was Jacob's favorite
Right.
because he was
Mhm.
Rachel's only surviving son and the baby. So the
Right.
youngest of all of them.
Right. Okay.
And
Thank you.
Jacob was very much in love with Leah. So
Yes.
that was their mother, I guess.
Yes.
Both of their mothers. No,
And
I'm
then-
sorry, not Leah, Rachel. Rachel was their mother.
Right.
And she was
Yes.
gone by now because she died in
Right.
childbirth with Benjamin.
Right.
Right.
Interesting.
Um,
I do find it weird that all the brothers had to go to Egypt in the first time. Now I understand them all going back the second time because Joseph said you have to all come. So that kind of makes some sense, but I don't know.
Okay.
Seems
Oh,
weird.
look at that.
There you are.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Everybody say hi to Andy.
Hi, Andy.
How cute.
He doesn't know what's going on.
Oh, thank-
Is he a lab?
So thank you.
He's at least letting you know when he needs to go out, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, he went right over to the door and he looked at it and he looked at me. So,
That's good.
so that was
That
good.
is- That is
So-
good.
I
so-
missed him on Wednesday.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, yeah, thank you for continuing to discuss while I was gone. Yes, Benjamin is Rachel's son, along with Joseph. So they're the favorites. I thought it was interesting that Jacob, well, I just thought, this seems pretty familiar. Jacob's organizing a gift to send to somebody to try and make them happy, to, try and I just wonder if any of the brothers would have thought of that, if Jacob hadn't said, let's send all of this stuff. I wonder if the brothers would have thought of bringing the money back, or if that was just Jacob's idea.
I kind of
I don't
got
know,
the
what do you
feeling
think?
that it was just Jacob's idea.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting that we never hear about Simeon again. I mean, there isn't anything in here about like a reconciliation with them when they finally go down.
There's one sentence.
Oh, was there? Okay.
Yeah. And that is, so we're about to read it. So in verse 23,
Oh, okay.
it says he brought Simeon out to them, but then that was kind of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I thought it was interesting that Judah was the only one who had the discussion with his father as well about getting the additional grain and going back.
yeah, whereas before it was Reuben,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and now Judah kind of takes the lead. And of course, David comes from the line of Judah, and of course then Jesus comes from that line as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and somebody on the Tuesday night group mentioned that the word Jew comes from Judah.
Judah.
Hmm.
That's where the word Jew comes from.
Mhm.
And of course, you have the kingdom of Israel to the north and the kingdom of Judah to the south after the United Monarchy split after Solomon. So, and the kingdom of Israel didn't survive. It got overrun by the Assyrians and they carried them all off, and who knows where they went. So the kingdom of Judah, they survived even in the Babylonian exile. and they were able to come back. And so, by the time we get to Jesus' time, it's the descendants of the kingdom of Judah that are the Jews. So Judah kind of takes the spotlight here, front and center, and he speaks for the rest of his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting, even during the famine, that they had the nuts and the almonds and the honey and some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the
Luxuries.
same thing. I guess they couldn't survive on that, but yeah.
And
Well,
the animals probably couldn't. They probably needed a
oh
grain
yeah,
or thing for the animals.
true. All right, will somebody read verses 16 through 34?
I can do that.
Thank you, Beth.
When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare dinner. They are to eat with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, "We were brought here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys." So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance to the house. "Please, sir," they said, "we came down here the first time to buy food, but at the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks, and each of us found his silver, the exact weight, in the mouth of his sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks." "It's all right," he said. "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver." Then he brought Simeon out to them. The steward took the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon because they had heard they were to eat there. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were, and then he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" They replied, "Your servant, our father, is still alive and well," and they bowed low to pay him honor. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" And he said, "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. After he had washed his face, he came out and, controlling himself, said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him.
Thank you, Beth. Well, what struck you here in this part of the story, or what questions came up?
I've always questioned as to why they don't recognize their own brother. That one of them didn't have some idea or thought, or I don't know, that just seems very odd to me.
Yeah, I agree. I guess, I rationalize it as it's been 22 years. He was still kind of just a kid the last time I saw him at 17, and he's probably got, all sorts of fancy clothes, maybe a wig, maybe some makeup,
He
Not,
probably looks Egyptian, which would throw them off. Yeah.
not that he's intentionally disguised, but that's how I always thought about it, I guess. The other thing is they're not looking for him.
Mhm.
They think he's dead. So
I also think that his behavior now is much different than what it was when he was so arrogant as a young man. You know, he's a man of power, and in speaking with them, he doesn't really come across as being arrogant, at least in the reading to me.
it's so many times it says he's overcome with affection and he has to weep.
Mhm.
I wondered what the brothers thought when Benjamin got 5 times the portion.
A growing boy.
Well, now this is part of Joseph's test. Remember, he's
Right,
so in favor
right.
of
I know.
Benjamin, but yeah,
I know. If I were one of the brothers, I'd be like, wait a minute, this sounds oddly familiar. I'd start getting suspicious again.
You're right.
I never noticed. I thought this was neat. I never noticed until I read this commentary in verse 33 that he seats them in the order of their age, and nobody, they'd not told anybody in Egypt their ages, and he seats them and it says they've looked at one another in amazement. And then to your point, Denise, they still didn't figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, with different mothers, some of them could have been just mere months apart. So you'd be really impossible to know ages. I mean,
That's true.
By
Yeah.
looking.
interesting.
It doesn't say anything in there that they were happy to see their brother who had been held hostage all that time.
Oh yeah, Simeon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. It just says that the steward brought Simeon out, and then that was the end of that. You're right. It doesn't record their reaction or anything.
Or
Yeah,
his.
Just
Or
like
his.
Jacob never said, "Oh, I really miss my son Simeon" either.
If that had been Benjamin, as soon as they got back, he would have said, "You boys, turn your butts around and go back."
Exactly.
Yeah. What was your opinion or impression of verse 23? The steward saying, "Your God and the God of your father must have put the treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Obviously, the steward is the one that had put the money in the sacks in the first place. He knows what's going on. But what do you make of him saying, "Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your sacks for you"?
You would have thought that they would have. Okay, wait a minute. This was an Egyptian talking about their God, who was a Jewish God. So you would have thought that would have made them kind of go, "What? What does he know about our God?" Unless I'm misunderstanding, but I thought it was they were Egyptian and they had their own God.
Yeah, no, you're right. This was an Egyptian steward.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know if Joseph was still worshiping his own God or the Egyptian God?
Oh, Joseph was still worshiping Yahweh God.
So I think that he brought the steward along with him and maybe convinced him that his God was the true God.
Me too.
Well, they knew he was powerful. The Egyptians did.
Right.
Well, the steward knows what really happened. You know, he was the one who put the money in the sack. And it's almost like maybe he and Joseph came up with this to say to the brothers, to get them to think that God is the one doing these things, so that later, because they know, Joseph knows what he's going to do with the cup later on.
Mhm.
So maybe he wants the brothers to think that God is responsible for all of this, because he wants them to feel like their guilt has been found out of what they did to him all those years ago, which is what ends up happening.
Mhm.
Well, and earlier, the brothers themselves, when they first saw the money in the top of their sacks, they say, "What is this that God has done to us?" So they've already they already thought that it was God anyway.
Mhm.
So I just thought that was a curious little verse. I don't know.
Mhm.
And I also noticed how much the brothers are bowing to Joseph and saying, "Your servant, our father, as well. Your servants," and they're using servant for themselves. Kind of the same as what Jacob did when he met Esau.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting correlation there because I didn't, as I was just reading through it before I read your notes, that didn't even occur to me that, it was very much like what Jacob had done.
The other thing I just noticed is it says that they made the present ready for Joseph, and then it doesn't say anything else about it after that. We don't know how Joseph received the present, or anything like that.
And do we think that the presents were the food, or we don't know?
Oh, it was what they brought down to him, the balm and the honey and the gum and the
Okay.
resin and the pistachio nuts and the almonds.
Okay.
So
A Harry and David gift basket.
They just delivered it and made it a lot easier. Yeah. Mhm.
well, the last thing I wanted to point out in this chapter, did you notice that in verse 32, where it says that the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. So some says it's detestable to the Egyptians.
Mhm.
Um,
Why?
what does that
Why?
sound like?
Well, weren't the Jews looked down upon by the Egyptians as kind of subservient people?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Well, this was true of any foreigner. The Egyptians felt themselves to be a superior race, people. They just felt themselves to be superior, I would say. At that time, there was no concept of races or anything like that. They just felt themselves to be the superior people. And so they would not eat with anyone else. But who does that sound like?
Well, in the days of slavery, I would imagine.
Well, sure, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna kind of go there next, but for those of you who were in the Acts study last year, maybe you remember, there was this whole controversy over Peter eating with the Gentiles, because that you didn't do that. Jews were not allowed to eat with Gentiles because
Right.
Mhm.
the Jews were superior to the Gentiles. It was an abomination. And so I just thought that was interesting, this little note here, and just thinking, well, they didn't really learn from that experience, did they?
They just learned they wanted to be on the superior side of that equation. Not that it was the wrong equation.
It's like the pilgrims coming over from England, or all of the people fleeing religious persecution. I used to think that people came over for religious freedom, but actually, when people of various faiths came from England to the U.S., they established their own colonies, and they made their faith the rule in their colonies. So it wasn't religious freedom so much as our faith is the correct one, so we're going to go and we're going to make our own place where our faith is correct.
They just had a PBS special on that.
Yeah, I think it was like there was the Massachusetts colony was like Calvinism, Presbyterianism, something like that. There was another, they had all sorts of different denominations that were popping up after the Reformation. And so, they didn't come over and say, okay, anybody can practice whatever religion they want. They came over and said, this is the Presbyterian colony. If you're in Massachusetts, you're a Presbyterian. It was the same thing. It was just a different denomination until the founding fathers, who were mostly deists, came along and said, we're going to have freedom of religion actually here in this country. So
Chris,
I never
was
knew
it,
that. I thought that was interesting.
Chris, was it possible back then that fleeing to would be what we might know as the Protestants were fleeing from the Catholics? Who were
Yeah, well, they were fleeing from the Church of England.
England, right?
Yeah. And it actually flipped back and forth
Yes, it did.
multiple times during that time period in England. It was, it just kind of depended on who the king was. Were they Anglican, were they Catholic, and it just flipped back and forth. And so that kind of ties into our discussion here. When the shoe was on the other foot, they were more than happy to burn at the stake the heretics.
Right.
And then it would flip, and then the people, the ones that got in power, would burn the other ones. So thank goodness we've come a long way from that.
Yes.
But I just thought, it's, we talked about on Tuesday night how it's so prevalent in our society. And Gary, you brought up slavery. I'm even thinking segregation. It's an abomination. When white people would refuse to eat with black people in the same diners. An abomination to sit and eat. And because if you sit down to eat with somebody who's different from you, that can go a long way to breaking down any sort of stereotype or barriers that you may have with that other person. And one thing I said on Tuesday night that I think is very true is that if you can, well, because we were actually discussing the shooting that happened in the Michigan school, and we were discussing what Joseph's brothers did to him. And I can't even imagine doing that to a sibling. I can't even imagine going into, and so, how do people do such detestable things? I think part of it is once you've decided that somebody is an abomination, it becomes a lot easier to do abominable things to that person.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of it. But when we dehumanize people and make them to be less than human, you know, they're monsters or they're monkeys, you know, when we use that kind of language, it makes it easier to do things to them that we wouldn't do to somebody that we see as equal.
Yeah.
Which is why I think having table fellowship with people who are different from us is so important.
Mhm.
So I've seen that change hearts and minds more than a good argument.
Mhm.
So much more than a good argument. So
Yeah, it appears as though Egyptians could eat or may eat in the same room as non-Egyptians, but not at the same table. Is that correct?
yeah, that's what was going on. So Joseph was at his own table. He
Okay.
was not with his brothers, but then he also wasn't with the Egyptians. Which raises a question for me, has he been eating alone this whole time?
Yeah. I don't know.
I think probably.
I mean, if they were that strict on it, it's possible.
It's interesting what little questions we have about these big things, isn't it? Just an ordinary kind of thing.
Well, and for as much power as he had, for them to still, I don't know, dig their heels in and decide that they're not going to eat with him. And here he has all this power in the country and they don't want to eat with him. It's just kind of odd, I think. But
We see a similar thing. We see a similar thing here, where you have Black people who have been able to rise through the ranks. We had a Black president a few terms ago, have been able to rise through the ranks and be educated, and then you still have people in some parts of the country who, no matter how educated or successful
Right.
that Black person is, they will still refuse to associate with them just because of their prejudices. So,
Right.
I think we still have that. So,
And that was a lot of that, I think I experienced when JFK became president too. There was a lot of feelings about him being a Catholic and becoming president. Which I thought this is an aside. I asked my young nephew who's 13 what if he talked about JFK November 22nd. He said his social studies teacher never brought up anything about the assassination. And I was I was floored. Absolutely floored.
Even here on the news, you didn't hear that much
No.
about the assassination on that date.
Nope.
was the 50th anniversary of that a year ago or 2 years ago?
It was in 63.
Hey, 63.
So
It'll be.
it's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming up.
But it was still the anniversary of the assassination of.
Right, that day.
I don't know why I thought that they had made kind of a big deal about it a year ago for one reason or another, but I must have dreamt that.
Well, that's when he would have been elected, wasn't it? I think that's when he would have been elected. And then
Or
he took
60.
office in 61.
61, right.
Hmm.
'Cause the election is in the even year and they take presidency the odd year, I believe.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Well, oh, you're fine. Well, let's go to chapter 44. And would somebody read in chapter 44, verses 1 through 17 for us?
I can do that.
Thank you, Molly.
Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain. And he did as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done.'" When he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them, but they said to him, "Why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servants is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves." "Very well, then," he said, "let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame, my slave." Where am I going here?
Oh,
Yeah.
into 17,
Oh,
if you
okay.
don't mind. Yeah.
Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it, and then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. Then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination?" "What can we say to my lord?" Judah replied. "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves, and the one who was found to have the cup." I go on.
One more.
But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who is found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you go back to your father in peace."
Thank you, Molly. Okay. My Bible labels this chapter Joseph's final test. What do you think of Joseph's final test?
It was interesting. They said that they searched the bags again, going from by age too. So the steward had to know their ages as well, it seems to me.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even notice that. They did it by age.
Mhm.
Sounds a lot like when Jacob left his father-in-law's house and they all got searched for the gods.
Mhm.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Right.
Whoever you find it with, let's kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thoughts centered around it's sort of a devious way for Joseph to be able to keep Benjamin with him. he's going to take them away from the rest of his half brothers.
I kind of think he wants to see what they're going to do. Now he's given Benjamin special treatment,
Right.
you know, and now he's orchestrated it to where they could just let Benjamin take the rap and they're free to go. They could just leave Benjamin behind. Are they going to discard Benjamin as easily as they had discarded him 22 years ago?
Yeah.
Or are they going to bring Benjamin home to their father at all costs? Like maybe they should have done with Joseph.
Yeah, I never caught it until you just said it, Chris, about it's like he stoked their jealousy. He's like, look, Benjamin's the favorite. It's like he's like setting this up, this big game. And you know, like maybe they would have fought for Benjamin before, but if I make sure I give him more, they'll be jealous, just like they were of me. It's interesting. I mean, they passed the test, but he had to kind of stack the deck.
They finally passed the test, yeah. But this is the thing, he needs to know if he wants, before he can offer to bring them down, before he can have a reconciliation with his brothers. And see, this is kind of what we were talking about in men's group this morning, you know, about being in toxic relationship with somebody. I mean, before he can agree to be in relationship again with his brothers, what they did to him was awful, despicable. Yes, he ended up, you know, rising through the ranks and everything, but there were some years he was enslaved, he was in prison. I mean, that was not a peachy time for him. So I think he wants to be with his family again, but he also he doesn't have to. He's Lord of Egypt. He does not have to subject himself to that kind of abuse again. And so he kind of wants to see, have my brothers repented? Has there been a repentance? You know, are they changed? Are they going to do this again, given the opportunity? And so I think that's kind of what's behind this whole elaborate test, game, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, kind of a tormenting, I think, but
I'm sure. Hey, I'm sure Joseph had a little fun with it. You know.
probably he did.
Yeah.
And like you said, they were very cruel to him.
Yeah, I mentioned Tuesday night, if you didn't know the beginning of the story, like if you hadn't read the beginning of the story and you only read this part of them going down and coming and what just, you would think, oh, these brothers, it's just one thing after another. They can't catch a break. They get such a bad rap. But if you know the beginning of the story, it's like, haha, they had it coming.
Right. Right. And
We
possibly,
go ahead, Norma.
and possibly with him doing this, it is really making these brothers think a lot about things that they have done in the past.
And in verse 16, Judah says, what can we say? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. I kind of feel like he's not talking about the cup there. God has found out our guilt. Seems a silly thing to say, because of course God knew they were guilty. God saw them do what they did, you know, all those years ago. But I think it was sort of a way of saying that it's come back to bite us now. No. So. Any other comments or questions on this section? I will say in verse 13, they all went back with Benjamin to this. They could have gone on to Jacob, but they all, every brother came back to try and, you know, fight to get Benjamin back. So Judah is the one that speaks here in this next section, but he is definitely speaking for all of the brothers this
Mhm.
time. It's not like before where Judah stuck up to his brothers for Joseph, but this time I think they're all in one accord and they are all speaking, Judah speaking for all of them. So would somebody read verses 18 through 34 then?
I will if you'd like.
Thank you, Gary.
Then Judah stepped up to him and said, "O my Lord, let your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ear, and do not be angry with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself." My Lord asked his servants, saying, "Have you a father or a brother?" And we said to my Lord, "We have a father, an old man, and a younger brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him." Then you said to your servants, "Bring him down to me, so that I may set my eyes on him." We said to my Lord, "The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die." Then you said to your servants, "Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more." When we went back to your servant of my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, "Go again, buy us a little food," we said, "We cannot go down. Only if your youngest brother goes with us will we go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us." Then your servant, my father, said to us, "You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, 'Surely he has been torn to pieces,' and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in sorrow to Sheol. Now therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up for the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant becomes surety for the boy to my father, saying, 'If I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain as my slave to my Lord in the place of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For now, can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the suffering that would come upon my father."
Thank you, Gary. So now this is the longest uninterrupted speech in Genesis. Which I thought was interesting, this speech right here. So it's got to be some kind of important.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What do you make of it?
Like a plea to me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I can almost imagine Judah also weeping as he's saying this,
Mhm.
just desperate.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of some beauty in it. I don't want to say it's poetic, but it's just like you don't understand how devastated our father was about losing his other son, and I think it's kind of beautiful. I mean, I read through it once, like,
Yes.
okay, but then as you read it again, you're like, wow, this is urgent, it's loving, and it's pleading, and
Mhm.
And I think they saw how it affected her father when Joseph, didn't come back. And I think it may have affected them more than we read in what we've been reading. I think they thought about it and then realized how terrible it was and how it affected their father, who I'm sure they loved. And so that kind of expression, they didn't want it to happen again.
they're probably all racked with guilt.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there was sure a lot of your servants and my Lord used in this speech.
Interesting, though, that in verse 27, Jacob mentions that he only has 2 sons. And so you kind of wonder if him saying that to the rest of his sons, I don't know, do they really feel like they have hurt him so badly by what happened to Joseph? That, for him to feel like he only had 2 sons. There's just such a divide in the family between the sons born to Leah and Jacob and the 2 sons born to Rachel.
You can really see, here Jacob's preference, because he says, that my wife bore me 2 sons. So the wife he's talking about is Rachel. I mean, he doesn't really even, Leah's just kind of there. He never wanted her in the first place. I mean,
Right. But it's interesting that he had more sons with her than any of the other wives.
He did, yeah. He did.
I wonder if there's I know it's not in this part of the story. I wonder if there's a hierarchy. I mean, clearly he favors Rachel and her children. I wonder if he then favored Leah and her children because she was still a wife over the, his servants, maybe last. I wonder if there was this hierarchy of, what children he favored based on who their mother was. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Having never been polygamous myself, I cannot attest to how that would feel.
But it's interesting, because by this point Rachel's gone, and I don't know, Leah could still be around for him to refer to Rachel as his wife, when theoretically, I mean, couldn't Leah still be alive here? And she would be his wife, the surviving woman he's married to. I don't know. The favoritism is very stark, is very clear. So.
But you're also right that there is, in this speech, it seems like the concern is entirely for the well-being of their father, entirely for Jacob. And yeah, this is maybe the first time that Joseph has heard how his father reacted to his supposed death. So it's got to be emotional for Joseph as well.
Well, it's been a period of, you said, 20 years. You would hope everybody would have matured somehow and had a lot of time to go through introspection about what they've done and what's transpired.
Since it took the brothers 2 years to come back, to get Simeon and to ask for more food, but also to take Benjamin down there. I kind of wonder what Joseph was thinking for those 2 years. I mean, did he think that they would never come back, or had he given up hope that they would come back? Who knows?
I think it might. Well, was it 2 years?
I think so.
I didn't think it was that long.
I was thinking that it was like a month. But is there somewhere else that it says 2 years? I may be wrong.
Okay.
Well, regardless, I'm sure Joseph, it was longer than it needed to be, and I'm sure Joseph was wondering.
Well, in my Bible, the question was, how long was Simeon imprisoned? And it said for less than 2 years, since the famine had only been going on that long.
Okay.
And let's see, there must be referenced in verse 45. In 45:6, verse 6, it says, for 2 years now, there had been famine in the land.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we don't know at what point in the famine they first went down.
Yeah, true.
So I was thinking a month based on
that's what I
43:10. If we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice. And it was a 2-week round trip journey from Egypt to Canaan. So, but it's somewhere in there. It was definitely longer than it needed to be. So he may have been wondering, well, are they going to come back for Simeon? I don't know. But they finally showed up, I guess. So.
And one of my footnotes says that this story shows where Judah, rather than the elder Reuben, plays the role of the most powerful and prominent son, which, like you said, is interesting from the time when they actually brought Joseph into the hole and everything. I think Reuben was the head guy then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
now
well,
now it's Judah. So maybe Reuben lost favor with his brothers.
Well, and the other thing is Reuben initially offered his grandchildren Jacob's grandchildren, his children as surety for Benjamin.
That's right. I forgot
Wasn't
that.
offer himself, but then Judah offers himself. So maybe a little bit. I don't know. Maybe he's got a little bit more.
That's a little more impressive to a father, I would imagine.
Yeah. Well, and since since Reuben could not convince Jacob to send Benjamin with them, but then Judah did. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. I was just thinking how this could be a good metaphor for our relationship with God. You know, that Joseph's brothers rejected him, and before Joseph deeply desired to be in relationship with his brothers, to have them back, but he couldn't do it until he knew that they had changed their ways and repented and wanted to be with him too. And so he couldn't just ask them because he wouldn't know if they were lying or not, you know. So he had to devise this test. I guess God tests us sometimes too, but you know, God also knows our hearts.
Right.
And so maybe it's a thing where, you know, with repentance, it's not that God doesn't want to be in relationship with us, but you know, we need to be in a state of repentance in order to be in relationship with God. I don't know. And how can we claim to be in relationship with God if we're hurting God either directly or by hurting people around us that God loves? But Joseph had already forgotten and forgiven his brothers. Remember, he had named his son Manasseh, saying, because God has caused me to forget all my hardship and everything that had happened to me. So I think he'd already forgiven his brothers. He just needs to know what kind of people they are now before they can have a relationship again. Sorry, I keep talking. Well, let's go to the chapter 45. And would somebody just read all of chapter 45? I know it's 28 verses, but it's not that long, actually.
I can.
Thank you, Tom.
Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly.' Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept, and Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace that Joseph's brothers had come, Pharaoh and all his officials were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'Tell your brothers, do this, load your animals and return to the land of Canaan, and bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land.' You are also directed to tell them, 'Do this, take some carts from Egypt for your children and your wives, and get your father and come. Never mind about your belongings, because the best of all Egypt will be yours.' So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them carts as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothes. And this is what he sent to his father: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other provisions for his journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they were leaving, he said to them, 'Don't quarrel on the way.' So they went up out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, 'Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt.' Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they had told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, 'I am convinced my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die.'"
Thank you, Tom. All right. Thoughts? Questions? Ideas?
Well, even though the Egyptians and Jewish people would not eat together, the Pharaoh seemed to be very generous to the Jews about giving them so many things and asking them to come back, because he kept saying the best of all the land of Egypt is yours.
Yeah.
I wonder how that went down with his Egyptian followers.
So somebody asked the same question on Tuesday. what do all the Egyptians think about the Hebrews coming in and taking the best part of the land? I said,
They didn't
well,
like it very much. Foreshadowing. They made them
that's
slaves.
true.
Yeah.
It's not like they can vote Pharaoh out of office or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, they do. Yeah, they do eventually enslave them. So. What do you think about Joseph's speech and his assertion that wasn't that that the brothers shouldn't be upset with themselves because God, it wasn't the brothers who sent him to Egypt, but it was God. Joseph is kind of the object here, and God is the subject. God sent Joseph. God made Joseph Lord of all Egypt. So
Yeah, it's like he's saying God chose his brothers to be, the way he got there. Yeah, I don't know.
what do you think about that? Do you think that God made his brothers sell him into slavery? You're shaking your head.
Well, I'm not a big person about. I'm all about free will, and I think they did it on their own, but I think God used that awful event for something really great here. I mean, like God can heal a lot of things, a lot of bad stuff we do to ourselves and to each other. God can bring good out of that, but that doesn't mean God caused it to happen. I just don't like seeing God as a big, master puppeteer. He made the brothers do it, but that's just me. I think he certainly redeemed this into something wonderful. And I think Joseph was supposed to be in Egypt, and Joseph was supposed to save, Egypt and his brothers and his father and from the famine. And God is certainly in the midst of all of that.
Yeah, in the footnotes in my Bible, I like what it says here, that the key message of this saga is that God is at work even amid the plans of evil men. So doesn't cause it, but that God's with us, and that Joseph was, that he remained faithful through all of the trials that he went through.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're right that what God is doing here, what Joseph is saying here, maybe he's not articulating clearly, is that God is using this evil thing that the brothers did in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you.
I was kind of surprised that there was enough provisions for everybody and there was only 11 donkeys full of stuff, unless there's more that we don't know about it, but it just sounded like, let's load up those 11 donkeys and you guys go back and take these things and then come back.
Well, I think he had wagons too.
Right.
Oh, that's right. I did
Mhm.
remember the wagons.
Joseph still seems to be acting a little bit paternalistic, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
He tells them not to quarrel along the way and tells them what to do. And
I wonder if that happened when he was with his brothers 22 years ago, that they quarreled a lot among themselves before he was pitched in the ditch.
It's in the ditch.
I like
that.
I like that. I like that
Yeah.
saying. Pitched in the ditch.
Yeah, but the footnote in my Bible says that the brothers had a history of quarreling. It says, in fact, they're pictured as bitter, hateful, and quarrelsome men. They think that Joseph was hoping this incident might bring harmony among them, and that's why he said to them to not quarrel.
Okay.
Can you imagine how Jacob must have felt
Hmm.
when he realized that Joseph really is alive?
Mhm.
You know, this is
After all that time. Mhm.
this is a wonderful story of, you know, reuniting and redemption and saving his family. But I kind of feel like he's still giving Benjamin a lot more to like keep stoking that fire of jealousy. I mean, maybe it was something innocent, like this is my full brother and you're my half. So maybe there's some legitimate reason for that, but I still feel like it's a little dig at the rest of them, even in the redemption of the family.
Did you notice what kind of thing he gave Benjamin more of also?
Clothes. Did he give him
Clothes.
clothes?
Right, clothes. Five outfits, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
More silver.
And this
And,
whole
yeah,
thing,
more silver.
you know, started over a coat.
So yeah.
Right, of many colors.
Don't think I also didn't notice that the brothers still have not told their father what they did to Joseph.
That's true.
They just came back and said, Joseph's alive. It's a miracle.
Mm.
You need to go out again?
And so
Can you
nowhere
wait
in
like
the,
5 minutes?
oh, so nowhere in the story ahead do the guys ever tell Joseph? I haven't read ahead. So he never finds out what they really did. I mean, Jacob never finds out what they really did to Joseph.
I don't think so.
I don't think so, but I also don't want to put my foot in my mouth before
That's okay.
read
All
it
right.
3 chapters later, but I don't think so. It's hard not to think that he wouldn't have found out, because once
Right.
he went and had a conversation with Joseph, I'm sure he would have figured out real quick.
Yeah, how'd you end up in slavery? How'd this happen? Oh, I tripped and fell in a ditch. I mean, yeah.
So
But maybe he doesn't tell his dad. Maybe, I mean, he does feel like the Lord sent him to Egypt, and it's maybe he
Mhm.
never told him.
Mhm.
That would really be a big forgiving of his brothers. I think some little boy's yawning on your lap there, Chris.
yeah, I'm trying to keep him from peeing on the floor.
As long as he does it on you, you're okay, huh?
He
Might be
won't
in your
do it
lap.
up here. He won't do it.
Oh,
No,
Well, you can
he'll
take him
wait.
out if you need to. We're
yeah, go
okay.
ahead and take him out, Chris. We'll wait.
We'll just wrap up and see you next week. I'm just kidding.
Let me just try real quick. I'll try real quick to take him out, and then
Okay.
I muted half sentence. We'll come back into prayer concerns. So,
Okay.
yeah, if there's anything else, 43, 44, 45 that you want to discuss, feel free to do that. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Beth, on a different subject,
Mhm.
I know there was a memo that came out that anyone that had those gifts for the first 3 or 4 families, they needed to be in by a week from Sunday.
All of the gifts need to be in by the 19th. Were there
Well,
some that needed to be in
there's-
sooner?
Yeah, this came from Chris. I think it was the first 3 or 4 families on that list that we got. They but he'll be back. I'll let him know. Main thing I was after, can I bring it Sunday? Is that too early to bring in a
Oh,
gift?
no, you can bring it. Or do you have gifts that don't need to be wrapped, Gary?
No, I have one that needs to be wrapped.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can bring them in this Sunday. Denise is going to have all of, in the ministry center where we usually put the posters and people know where to put the gifts. So that should be up by this Sunday.
Okay,
And if you have any gift cards, those will go in the big envelopes.
okay, no.
Yeah. No, I did not see that memo.
Yeah, I forget,
Was
And
it in any?
what house is it? But it needs to be delivered by the 12th or 13th.
Oh, it was in the Northwest Happenings email. Didn't it say like
Oh,
families
today?
1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 have to be there early? I think I read something about that.
Yeah, it's something like that, yes.
Mhm.
Because it'd be
Okay.
delivered, they're not picking them out on. It was something that was different about them. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
if Denise
So
is still on
Christmas
here, she-
gifts for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. They have to come back by this Sunday, or no, excuse me, by the 12th.
Right, which would be a week from this Sunday.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, we got, Jane got an email from Alva's house saying,
Oh,
just
amethyst.
yeah, just a
Okay.
reminder that the gifts have to be here by December 13th.
Wow.
And I guess she didn't know that. We didn't know that. So
Okay.
today I texted you, Gary. I
Yes,
texted
I get that.
and
Yeah.
called individually everybody who had signed up
Wow.
already. And in addition, Denise also put it in the email blast. So it's just the first 5 families 1 through 5.
Okay.
And
But
we sent them a check yet.
so I don't know why. They've got a whole new team
No, the check for
there.
the Christmas.
As I understand it, there's a whole new team. And so from previous years, so I guess they decided to do things differently because we've never had to do that before. It's
Mhm.
always been the
Same
Sunday
day.
before. Yeah.
Right.
So, but yeah, so if you have stuff for those first 5 families, and again, I reached out individually to everybody. We need those back by December 12th.
Well, okay.
The rest of the families is December 19th. So.
Chris, do you know if most of the gifts have been picked up for those 5 families?
I think most, yes. There were still, I think, 24 or 25 left to be claimed,
Okay.
but that was out of, I can't count how many. There were a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were a lot of kids, and each kid had 3 or 4.
I bet you'll get a lot of those picked up this week because some people might have picked up last week, but they were gone for Thanksgiving weekend.
Mhm.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get a lot picked up this week, and whatever doesn't get picked up, that's what the $1 a week that we donate, that's what that goes toward. So and I think there's leftovers from years past also, so there's plenty in the fund to make sure that everybody gets their Christmas gift. So
So
Well,
if
Go ahead,
we
Norma.
sign up online, then somebody remove the tags from the tables each day so that
yeah,
not
Denise
duplicates.
reprints them and
Okay,
puts in the names
They
and
have
removes
set
the
on the
tags if it's been signed up online. So
because I signed up additional person today again, and I didn't know if she really knew I did that, or if the tag
But-
was on the table yet.
yeah, I think it will. I think she picks them up and then replaces them on Sunday, so that when people come on Sunday, they're refreshed as
Okay.
refreshed as possible. So
Mhm. Chris, Ann and I have not sent our check in. What was it, $1? What was the amount?
I think it's $16
Oh,
is what it
16.
ends up being.
Okay,
Um,
16 weeks, $16. Okay.
Yeah, I just put a 20 in the basket and said
Yeah.
keep the change. So
If we send that in, what do we
If you
make
put-
reference to?
if you put Christmas families on it
Right. Okay.
in the memo,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, write Christmas
Christmas
families in the
families,
memo.
right?
In the memo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Andy?
Chris, if we, for the Amethyst families, if we need extra gifts picked up next week, I have time that I can do that. If we don't have,
Okay.
we don't have all the
Beth,
gifts. that are taken
Beth,
care
if we send extra money for a gift, could you pick one out for someone
Sure,
if you're going to be shopping?
yeah,
Okay. We'll get that in the mail then.
okay.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Beth. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll see. I would say after Sunday, see which ones don't get picked up.
Right.
And then we can take them off the Sign Up Genius and just go and make sure we get the rest of the gifts with. So if you're able to go do that, that would be great.
I will have
Is
time to
there-
do that next week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Beth.
Sure.
All right, prayer concerns for tonight. Tom, should we pray for your brother? And
Yeah, my brother and sister-in-law and nephew are all positive for COVID,
Oh,
Aw.
and they're not vaccinated.
no, they're not.
Nope. And my
Oh.
mom was there over the weekend, so she is quarantining until her test comes back, although she has been vaccinated. But she had her test yesterday and she doesn't have the results yet. So Heather took groceries over and she's staying home for now.
Mm.
She feels fine, but
Good.
we're being careful. So, and my father-in-law had cataract surgery this morning and that went well. So
Good.
Ann and I are just, we thank everyone for their prayers, and we're thankful that how, other than being isolated, and we've kind of stayed away from everybody for like, I think this is like almost 3 or 4 weeks. We thank God and thank prayers that our symptoms were very light. And even though the weakness and that came, we're very fortunate. And we thank God and all the prayers for that.
good.
Another one that came out at our men's study today, Howard Kimberly has a small cancerous tumor on his lower back. Is that, you recall that? That's exactly what he said.
that's what he said, Gary. He said that the doctor said that they should be able to get that in one radiation treatment. So that was
Wow.
the good news. So
Great.
yeah.
He did not look good.
No.
Hasn't looked good for a while.
And then I know Denise was on earlier, and her dad's just not doing well. So he was coming bouncing back, and then he had another fall that really set him back, and so he was just not doing well. So prayers for Don and for Denise and her family. So
I had this on the prayer chain, but my friend Lisa, her son who had Down syndrome, passed away 2 Sundays ago from a heart attack. So if you would pray for Lisa. It's real tough on her and the family right now. So,
we'll keep Lisa in our prayers.
I received a picture via cell phone of my aunt eating dessert. on Thanksgiving Day, and she looked really, really happy. So
Good.
that's my
Good.
Aunt Mary in Kentucky, who is in hospice, but she apparently enjoyed her Thanksgiving, and I haven't gotten to talk to her yet. So I'm looking forward to chatting with her and hearing how that went. But she's only 114 pounds, so
Mm.
We'll keep her in prayer as well.
yes, you have been. Thank you very much.
Let's pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you once again so much for this time to come together to discuss your word, to learn from it and to learn from each other. We thank you for the example of Joseph and for the example of Joseph's brothers. We pray for all in our world who are estranged from their family, who are unable to be with their family, and who desperately desire reconciliation. God, we are mindful of the many hurts in our nation, in our world, in our community. We particularly lift up to you the family and friends of the victims of the school shooting in Michigan. We also, God, are still mindful of the missionaries in Haiti who are still trapped and wondering what's going to happen next. We pray for all hearts to turn toward you, oh God, and that love would abound, not only for you, but also for all our neighbors. We ask that you would be with Tom's brother's family, with Steve and his family as they battle COVID. We pray that you would be with our brother Howard as he is dealing with this tumor on his back. We pray for our sister Denise and as she cares for her dad, and we pray for her dad and for her mom as well. We pray for Lisa, Beth's friend, as she mourns the passing of her son. We know that you will be close with her and ask you to send her peace and comfort in the days ahead. And we pray for Norma's Aunt Mary as she's in hospice, and ask for your healing and your comfort to be with her as well. God, we thank you for Sam and for Ann for feeling better. We thank you that they're able to join us even from so far away. And we ask that you would continue to guide us and to bless us over the coming week and to bring us back together again safely next time. We lift all these things up to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Guys, have a good week.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Guys, take
Thanks.
care.
Week.
Take care.
Sam. Hi,
Bye.
Ann. Hi to Ann.
Mhm.
Okay.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.